Hello everyone and welcome back to Zotac with another one of those overclocking videos. So now what we have here is my Zotac AMP GTX 780 Ti, and I've been messing with it a bit over the last couple of days. So as you can see, I removed the shroud because well, I noticed that removing the shroud actually gives you a lot of additional cooling headroom, and since I wanted to leave it on a stock cooler, I now run it like that. So that's why it looks like this. I also did test it with the Morpheus heatsink, and I also did test it with the water loop. This card just doesn't scale, so that's why it's on the stock cooler. You can get a bit like it can run a bit cooler, but it's not helping for overclocking. It's just because that heatsink is not all that good. But what does increase overclocking potential on this card is what I also did with it. Because this is no longer running the crappy 106% power limit reference BIOS for the 780 Ti. Since this being a reference PCB, it ran the reference BIOS, which allows for a power limit of 250 watts, which is not enough. Because yeah, like my other 780 Ti, I looked into it a bit, and that BIOS has a literal extra 100 watts of power limit compared to this. This has 250, my Gigabyte card had 350. So yeah, I got rid of the standard BIOS. I tried several BIOSes. I first tried the BIOS from my other card, didn't work. For some reason the card behaved really weird. It throttled even harder than before, and well, yeah, that didn't work. I also tried the EVGA classified BIOS, same thing. Then I tried the ASUS BIOS, even worse. Couldn't even get above 1 GHz. And then I've just thought, well, what happens if I flash the Kingpin BIOS? Since the Kingpin BIOS literally just doesn't have adjustable power limit in software, though theoretically it has a 365 watt limit, but I think that's just a number they programmed in there. I think it actually doesn't really have a power limit. Well, I flashed it on there and it worked. The card now runs stock above 1.2 GHz, and it does clock a little bit higher than before. It's not that I got two higher clocks stable than before, it's just it can now hold clocks. So this now runs like the core in there is capable of 1.254 GHz. Before it wouldn't run those, it wouldn't run that clock for long because well, it just throttled. It would lower the voltage, then it would lower the clock. With the Kingpin BIOS, just that doesn't happen. It can hold that clock now, but yeah, it can't get any higher. So even with the 1.2 volt lock that this BIOS has, the core just doesn't scale. So cooling, no scaling. Static voltage, no scaling. Maybe it will scale if we just give it more voltage than 1.2 volts, but yeah, I'm not going there yet. So yeah, the core is pretty much where it was before, but it now runs like a flat line. The clock does no longer fluctuate. But what did improve is memory overclocking. Now I suspect that the Kingpin BIOS actually just gives you more memory voltage. So if I remember correctly, stock should be about 1.5 volts. Maybe this gives 1.6 or 1.75. I don't really know. What I know is that the memory picked up a lot, and I really mean a lot of extra clocks. The memory on here was pretty bad actually. It did just plus 225. Now it does plus 420. So it almost doubled, which is pretty nice. So in the end I could get it to run faster, since I observed that giving it extra memory clocks actually has quite a bit of an impact. You get quite a lot of extra Fire Strike score from that. So yeah, I'm happy that that the Kingpin BIOS did something. So I'm no longer having to deal with the power limit. I can overclock memory, like it can decently overclock memory now. It can't touch the plus 500 that my Gigabyte card did before, but yeah, plus 420 is decent. That's pretty good actually. So yeah, that's one 780 Ti. And here's my other one, my Gigabyte card. So why am I showing you a dead card? Well, actually because it's not dead anymore. I repaired it. Or more or less, I just found a fix for the thing that was dead. Being the memory, or it could also be the memory VRAM. I don't quite know. I haven't taken a multimeter to it just yet. So, the issue with this card and how I ended up fixing it. So basically, how it began is the card just it would boot up normally. You start a game, and about 10 seconds after you get into that game, you would get the standard GDDR5 artifact pattern when the memory just gives up on you, and that would happen every time. And yeah. Back then I didn't really know much about how hardware works, so I just thought, well, the card is dead, and I put it away. And then exactly 1 year and 2 days later, I just thought, I just flashed a BIOS on this one. What if I just flash another BIOS on this one, but this time a modified one? So I just thought, these two cards use pretty similar PCBs. This one has a more powerful PCB, but like it's using the same PWM controller. It's also 8 phases, though those are a little bit more powerful. Both have Hynix memory, and yeah, I just I put this card in, and actually it booted up normal. It just artifacted all over the place a couple of times. And I got into GPU-Z, I read the BIOS from this card, then I got into Kepler BIOS editor, and I changed the stock memory speed from 3.6 GHz to 500 MHz, just to look if maybe a really low memory clock that you couldn't achieve in MS Afterburner, because I only could lower it by like 300 MHz in MS Afterburner, which did not help. So I locked it to 500 MHz stock, which is really low. But I just wanted to know what happens. And yes, the card does work now. Memory running at 500 MHz, the card runs completely fine. There are no artifacts, the card is completely stable, it finishes benchmarks, it can play games. Thing is just, it's not really great at running games. So 500 MHz on memory gives you about the same performance you would get from a GTX 580 overclocked, which is not what you would expect of a 780 Ti, especially not from a 780 Ti that has a good of a core as this has. So I did try core overclocking a bit, and this one clocks about, yeah, not just about, more than 50 MHz higher than this one. And this one is running the stock BIOS. This one is running an extreme overclocking BIOS. And yeah, so this one does make it to 1.312 GHz. So over 1.3 GHz, where this is around the 1.25 GHz range, which is also, yeah, maybe the core on here is better than 75% of 780 Ti's, whereas the core on here is better than 15% of 780 Ti's. So there's quite a big of a difference in the ASIC quality of those cores. And yeah, so I actually did manage to overclock the memory a bit back up, just below 1 GHz, then it starts artifacting again. So yeah, this tells me two things. One, I can absolutely fix this card. It is working now. My 780 Ti is alive again. though it is not running that great. And the second thing it tells me is that's definitely memory related. The core is completely fine. Whatever is broken on this card has to do with the memory system. So that can be two things. Either it's the memory itself, that one or more of the modules just got unstable, they are faulty, and they can't run the stock speeds anymore, and they have to be locked to a lower clock speed to run stable. Or it is the memory VRM. The memory VRM could also just spit out less voltage than needed because maybe there's something wrong with the feedback circuit from the PWM controller for the VMem VRM. Haven't tested it. It's just a thought. Maybe the VMem VRM just gives the memory not enough voltage to run stable. But I don't think that this is the case, because I also now flashed the Kingpin BIOS onto this. So both of those cards are running the same BIOS now. And it didn't work. So memory didn't become stable. Because well, I actually haven't confirmed it, but I have a suspicion that the Kingpin BIOS raises your memory voltage, and it's not doing anything on this card. There's some weird things going on with this card. Sometimes it boots up just fine, and sometimes, like, if you push the memory too far and it has a violent crash, not just like a normal crash where just your benchmark application closes and you land back on desktop, like a really, really violent crash where you get a ton of artifacts and then your PC is forced to reboot. That kind of crash. I had it happen with the card because I pushed the memory too far. And I think I tripped some kind of safety mechanism on the card. So now, what it does now is when you boot it up, it won't load the drivers anymore. So if you go into the device manager, it will say this device has told Windows it has a problem and the drivers have been stopped. It did this before, and I managed to fix it, but I actually don't know how. I just took the card out of storage after it had been sitting there for months probably, put the cooler back on, put it in the system, and it booted up fine. And yeah, whereas before it did what it does now. So yeah, either it's just maybe the BGA connectors on one of the memory chips are just loose, and sometimes the cooler has enough pressure to like put it back in so the BGAs have contact again, and sometimes it doesn't work. Maybe that's it. Or it's like it is a Gigabyte product, and Gigabyte is known for putting dual BIOS on everything. So maybe the card has dual BIOS and it just went into the other BIOS and it's now trying to run stock settings again, which doesn't work because the memory is too unstable. Don't really know, but since I flashed the Kingpin BIOS, I don't think that's the case. So I'll try to work this out. I will at some point take a multimeter and measure the output of the VMem VRM to figure out if it's one of the memory modules or it's just a VRM problem. I'm kind of hoping for it to be a VRM problem because I only would have to replace the PWM controller probably. Like there could be something wrong with the like the input pin of the PWM controller, so it can't receive a proper signal anymore which voltage it should put out, so it just puts a pre-programmed voltage which may be too low. I don't really know. I haven't looked at the PCB where the PWM controller for the memory VRM is. But so yeah, the card can run. You need to do some weird stuff with it, but the card can run benchmarks. I just gotta figure out how to disable that safety mechanism again. Yeah, and then when I do it, so I'm still planning on repairing whatever is faulty on the card. like maybe replacing that PWM controller. Maybe I'll have to desolder all the memory modules and put new ones back on. Maybe I'll just go to eBay and buy a 780 Ti with like a dead core or something, and then steal the memory off of that, put it up on here, and then I can do the following. Then I will take this here and put those two in SLI, which is yeah, I'm not getting this thing on right now, but you see what I mean. So I will run those SLI. If I remember correctly, 780 Ti's and SLI should be about as fast as a 1080, but to be fair, 1080 with 3 GB of VRAM, so it will not be as good in 1440p or 4K, but the brute force of the 780 Ti's should be quite impressive. So yeah, that's the update, pretty much what I wanted to say about what I've been doing in the last time. So I took a bad 780 Ti and made it better. I took a good 780 Ti and made it gooder, or just it's alive again. It's like a the card is a zombie now, where it's kind of undead because, well, the problem still persists. I just found a fix that's kind of working, but not really working because performance is pretty bad now. But yeah, yeah, that's it with my 780 Ti's, and yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm just playing with graphics cards the whole time, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. No need to make it any more longer. So yeah, hope you enjoyed watching this video, which is, like always, improvised. Take my graphics card and start talking. Well, whatever. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna see you next time. Bye.